Hello and welcome to Astrocast. I'm Heather Rowan Robbins. I've been an astrologer for many decades, and I use choice-based astrology. In other words, I see each symbol as having 180 degrees of expression, each sign, each aspect. And our job as astrologers is to help you see the potential in that, work towards the positive side, and be aware of the shadow side of every aspect to help you negotiate your world. So for the first 15 minutes, I'm going to talk about the astrology of the month ahead, the coming eclipses, the shooting in Minnesota this morning, and then I will bring on my friend Louise Edington with her fascinating new book on Ceres and how it affects all of our charts. It's the asteroid that's really a planetoid. It's no more an asteroid than Pluto is. So first, talking about today, here we are at as Scorpio rising, the moon in Libra opposed Chiron. And in this week, one of the most poignant, painful pieces of this weekend, we had a new moon, 0 degrees Virgo on Saturday, but Venus is opposing Pluto. And when Venus opposes Pluto, we often lose there's something that brings us to our hearts, some sense of loss that says, how do you love in the face of life and death? How can pain bring you deeper into your feelings, deeper into awareness? It is our own personal Persephone descent and return. And we don't say why things happen, but we can use this aspect to say, how can we make use of this time? Now, last weekend, an elder in our community, my mate's Sundance leader, Beverly Little Thunder, died after a long illness or a short illness. And it was right on schedule, and it's all of us are in deep feeling around that, aware of that loss. We can see that whenever that you see that Venus-Pluto opposition, doesn't mean everybody you know is going to die, but some headline might trigger you to remember that loss exists. What is love on the other side? How do you love with that poignancy like a flower in the spring? How do you love knowing that some of your beloveds are in the spirit realm? This morning in Minnesota, there was, speaking of hopes and prayers, and there was a shooting in a church where a gunman came in and shot a church full of kids getting ready to go to school at 8:30 this morning. And it is, that Venus Pluto weren't that many triggers in that place at that time, but we see that often you have an event like that right after that Venus Pluto opposition of having felt alone or of loss, because you can respond to that by feeling isolated and shut down, or by opening your heart with compassion and and feeling for those that who feel shut down, but they're still not allowed to shoot up a room full of kids. We also saw that sun as that new moon squared Uranus, and that can bring the crazy out. That can bring all of our unsettled qualities. Now, unsettled can bring us to a good place, but it's still unsettled. And it's still, once things are ungrounded, we can shift them forward in a good way, or we can act out as has been happening around the country. Now, there's a really interesting series of aspects that's about to kick in that hasn't kicked in. There was somewhere right before our American country was built, and I'm going to show you those aspects in a minute. But we see moving into play Uranus and Pluto, the two planets we associate most with change and upheaval, are moving into a trine. They are in exact trine now, though they're, Pluto is retrograding. They're going to move back and forth in this way all for the next few years. And they both trine into or sextile into Neptune. And right now, Saturn and Neptune are conjunct, sextile Uranus and sextile Pluto. And I think this is a huge shift of gears. Now, in the mid 60s, Uranus conjunct Pluto. Shortly after that, they began to talk to Neptune, first Uranus, then Pluto. but that's not, so we felt that in the mid 60s, that conjunction, that was the new moon of this aspect. They squared as Obama came into office, and we could feel all those shifting gears and the right to marry and the, a black president and all the potential that came. But it came under tension because that was a Uranus Pluto square. It was a challenge. Now we're moving into that potential of that time has a chance over the next 4 or 5 years of moving, either being obliterated or moving into the further, making it actually happen as Uranus trines Pluto for the next couple of years, both sextiling Neptune, believing in vision. Now, I'm a little concerned about Neptune in Aries. That tends to idealize violence and idealize authoritarian structures and fascism, but it also idealizes revolution, rebellion, and independent thinking. So we can lean, that's again where choice-based astrology come in. What do you want to vote for with your imagination? How do you back that up with action over the next few years? So this powerful arrangement of what's going on at the time, and I'm going to bring Louise in and ask for her comments on this also as we go along. But right now we're looking at the eclipse coming up on September 7th at 15 Virgo Pisces. Again, eclipse season, when we move into eclipse season, things tend to change fast. With the aspects we are just watching, when anything involves Uranus, what you're seeing is the clutch is in. We are out of the old gear. What gear do we want to shift into? It's a time of great potential. We can go back to the old gears, but that's full of excitement and change, but we are destabilized. We can move into a much better gear, but that takes effort, focus, and direction. This is eclipses do something along the same lines. They end a place. It's a ripe fruit falling. It's like astrological acupuncture. Everything is lined up, zing at that point. So if you have anything close to 15 degrees of mutable signs, you may resonate with this. It does not necessarily create crashes out of nowhere. Usually what gets triggered is, like I said, ripe fruit falling. If you've been delaying a breakup, you may break up then because it's time. It's been time for a while, and now it's eclipsed. If you've been trying to make a job change, that may hit and poof, you don't have that old job. Now it's time for the new job. But you can use that in a good way to say, what am I ready to release? And what do I want to be born with this astrological acupuncture? We're going to move on to the solar eclipse on September 21st at the last degree of Virgo. And it's interesting that we had such a charged first new moon of Virgo, and this is the second new moon because it's close. It was the very last degree, and it was at the very first degree. So this new moon in Virgo at 29 degrees is going to hit that resonance notes, again, asking us to kick into gear. It is opposed. Saturn will have retrograded back to that place. And, and it's going to bring up questions of authority, structure, security. You can make a change to move that into a good direction, but you can't ignore the work. You can't just say, oh, I'll ignore it and it will stay the same. It is a time to look at those rebuilding, that restructuring of your life. Now, that goes right into the fall equinox the following day at 0 degrees. Again, it's an inception chart. It's the beginning of a season as the sun goes into Libra, moon in Libra, because they will change right after that eclipse, both of them. And that new moon, that sun in Libra forms a beautiful trine to Uranus and Pluto. It will form a grand trine with Uranus and Pluto in air signs. Philosophical change, a chance to search new answers. It can also mean ridiculous rhetoric, but it calls us to look for a philosophical underpinnings for this next phase of our life. So I want you to think about how to use these aspects in the coming months. It's going to be an interesting process. And I'm going to bring Louise on, and I'd like to hear Louise. One, welcome. This
Hi.
is Louise Edington, and we'll introduce you fully in a minute. What do you think of this really
Mm.
interesting uh,
Oof.
fall equinox chart?
Yeah, I hadn't actually looked at it yet, but looking at the process of the charts going through the eclipses to this one, it's kind of really a tale of endings and beginnings to my mind. Really, I think this eclipse season is going to reveal more and more to people what they need to release, shed, purge, restructure, let go of. And then here we get the new beginning here, the radical new beginnings. It's I find it really interesting that Venus and Ceres will be aspecting each other on the lunar eclipse chart,
Mm-hmm,
and
mm-hmm.
I'm here to talk about Ceres. And Ceres is about grief and loss, amongst many other things. And I
And
didn't
here we
actually know
are,
about
that
the
lunar
shoot.
eclipse. Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know about the shooting this morning because I had not looked at the news. So, and then I'm
Mm-hmm.
sorry for the loss of your friend.
Mm-hmm.
I
It was
think we're going
tough.
to see it. I think we're going to see a lot of that, and but it's kind of happening to show people what we need to change.
I agree. I agree. And in
Hmm.
this changing of the season, we feel those aspects that call us, that we have to release summer to
Mm,
move into fall, to move into winter, to move into the next spring. And that's something very
mm,
poignant about this time of year that reminds us of
mm,
the power of cycles and the role of loss
mm.
in cycles in the rebirth.
And we're
When it,
moving into such a new period of
mhm,
air and fire with those major planets changing signs that equinox chart really brings that in, I think, as well.
mhm.
So,
And one of
mhm,
the pieces, we're looking at a year of such radical change. I have looked back and I cannot find another
mm,
time, and I'm sure that's there out
mhm.
there, but not in the last couple hundred years, where the five outer planets change signs in one year. Pluto
I
finished.
don't know any astrologer that's found it going back further
Yeah,
than that. So,
Pluto finally entered Aquarius. It was going back and forth between Capricorn and Aquarius right before the new year. Then we had
mhm,
Jupiter, Uranus, Neptune, Saturn have all shifted signs. Now they're going
mhm,
back this fall. This week, Saturn retrogrades back into Pisces on September 1st.
mhm,
Then Neptune and Uranus will start retrograding back, and will Uranus retrogrades on September 5th, and they come back and speak to remember where we were right before all
mhm,
these changes kicked in this year, to remember what we were doing last fall, to remember what we've learned over the last 5 to 10 years. Bring that into our
mhm,
heart. Kind of remember that, because we need to take that, what we've learned, into this next piece. All these planets move from introverted, introspective water and earth signs, and grounded into fire and air, into thoughts and actions, and not into
mhm,
thinking things through and introspecting. So we're coming back to a more introspective fall, and then moving into this time of great action in the springtime, when Saturn
mhm,
has another 2 years in Aries before it goes into Taurus. And I think the fire begins to calm down, but that is paying attention to um, what we do with that. I think of Stalin as the worst case scenario of Aries. There's
mhm.
that fire can be so. Um, we're seeing that. Just make it simple,
Yeah.
direct, and authoritarian, instead of inspire. The best of Aries is, how do you
Mhm,
inspire the spirit in each person to hear their own calling, their own direct connection to the muse, which I think is the
mhm.
gift of Aries. So we're going
I
to,
agree.
yeah. So don't be surprised
Mhm,
if this fall is starting now, starting this week, begins to review everything you've learned over the last couple of years. Don't think, oh my
mhm,
God, I'm back here, I'm stuck, but more like, what did I learn? How can I take those lessons into the future? And it may be
Mhm.
someone who reminds you of a person you let go of, comes back and go like, what are you going to do this time? It could be that you come back
Mhm.
to the same place. Now, our whole world is changing so much with that, as with Uranus and Pluto, both in air signs. I see the huge changes that AI is bringing to our work
Mm.
situation and to the world. And so many jobs are being uh, obsolete, declared obsolete. What is being changed with that? What is coming in? Not that we,
Mhm.
how do we work with that? That's, if that's your gift, good. But what else is there? What does that free us to do? The
Mhm.
only point of any of this technology is to free us to come back closer to something closer to a heart, more enlivening, more worthwhile, more human. So how can it make it
Mm.
more human instead of depersonalize us even more, even though the artwork is starting to show that? So I think that's going
It's
to be a key question this fall.
There's also ideologies as well, all that air sign. It's almost
Mhm.
like we've tried all these different so-called ideologies or political systems, whatever you want to call them. And I've heard, many people starting to talk about we need something completely new and different. Um, yeah.
So that's that search for something
Mhm.
completely new and different. I
Yeah.
always think
Yeah.
that is Uranus's theme song. And now for something completely different. I think of that Monty
Yeah.
Python phrase.
I-
And it's saying, and now for something completely different. But let it
Mm.
be that comes. So many people think they found a new thought, but really they've just forgotten where it came from in history.
Yeah.
Anything new has to come, including the wisdom of our past, or we just go back and do it again.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
Saturn retrogrades back into Pisces on September 1st. Mercury retrogrades back into Virgo on September 2nd. And then it immediately squares Uranus on September 3rd. And then Mars squares Pluto. Mars squares Jupiter on September 4th. Now it's going to be really interesting as Mercury retrogrades, moves forward into Virgo. It's going to oppose that Saturn, square the Uranus. Whenever any planets are getting ready to change signs, they're going to be setting off all of those, those major outer planets. And
Mm.
and it was with, like, they ring like a bell, and then we have a quiet spell, and then they ring like a bell again.
Mhm.
But Mercury going into Virgo on September 2nd will help us get ready for the fall. It helps us every time when Mercury goes into Virgo, we, suddenly, school supplies look good. And we, our new school clothes kind of feel sexy, even if we don't, not going back to school. It's that kind of, we want our tools of our trade. So that's going to be lovely. Watch for that. Mars is in Libra, but square Jupiter, it still brings out our competitive edge. So expect kids going back to school to have to deal with that competitive edge, or to hear, that competitive edge showing up. But we can use that to compete against our personal best, to achieve ourselves, to challenge ourselves to grow, rather than to buy in to other people's nonsense. Now, Venus trines
Mhm.
Ceres on September 6th, which might be helpful in this process, right before the
Mm.
lunar eclipse on new full moon on September 7th. Then we have both the Sun and Mercury will be sextiling Jupiter on September 12th, a time to speak up, to kind of see something in a bigger picture. Kids that went back to school and had a tough time, or back to work, might find that that's when suddenly their resume is looked at, or they finally meet a friend in the school. Something opens their world in a better way. Then and Venus sextiles Mars on September 15th, which can be quite flirtatious time. A time to come more back into, like, what's interesting about people around us. How can we enjoy that socialization, which will help school kids, as Venus and Mars are both in social signs as the school year begins, and can help us move into that uh, more mm, uh, more social place, and feel a little less
Mhm.
shy as we begin that coordination. Now, on the September 17th, um, Mercury opposes Saturn, and on the 18th, Mercury enters Libra and opposes Neptune. So, and then sextiles Uranus and sextile trines Uranus and then trines Pluto. So it's going to be some interesting changes. Keep your eyes open September 17th through the 19th for a fresh perspective, new ideas. It could be quite the political outcry because Mercury goes into Libra. It's not that critical edge of Mercury and Virgo. It's wanting things fair and being painfully aware where they are not fair. So it's a good time to start moving in that motivation. The sun opposes Saturn, and right before it's the lunar eclipse on the 20th and the 21st, and then Mars enters Scorpio on the 22nd. I think there's going to be some, gird our loins for some big changes that will be less on the personal level, but could be more on what our community has to deal with as on that solar eclipse oppose Saturn and as Mars goes into Scorpio. It's kind of, and now we play hardball. So take good care of yourself into that time. Enjoy the equinox right afterwards, always a time of opening and balancing in our lives. We may really need it after that time. But remember, destabilization, and I think we'll be seeing a lot of that, can destabilize what is not working and help us shift gears into what is. So I would ask you to just keep that conversation in your mind. What do you want to see instead? In your personal life, in your politics? Where do you want to take this? Because having that lighthouse, having that goal will help us make the decisions when small problems, when create openings. So that's my comment for this. And now I want to introduce my friend Louise, who
Hi.
has who goes as the Cosmic Owl, has several books out, has a regular article, and has been a really fascinating research recently on Ceres. So tell me more, Louise. What would you like us to know about you and your
Oh,
work as an
well,
astrologer?
I've been studying astrology, what I would call real astrology, since my first Saturn return, but I didn't start practicing till 2012, and for money, that is. I was
Hmm.
practicing before, practicing as a professional astrologer until in 2012. And since then, my work with astrology has just deepened and grown. That's one thing I love about astrology.
Yes,
You,
just keeps going
there's always
deeper.
something new to learn and deeper. Yeah, it goes deeper and deeper. And then my world, my own personal world in astrology changed when I realized that my birth chart, my birth time was wrong, from my mother's memory. And I rectified my chart and realized that this object Ceres had been hidden under my what I thought was my rising sign, my ascendant, all the time. And I really kind of felt I stepped into who I truly am, and Ceres started speaking to me in a big way, which has led to this book. And so there's lots more I could say about myself as an astrologer, but I
I
tend to do
just got your book.
everything.
I'm finding it
Mhm,
fascinating. And
mhm,
Ceres, when I looked at it, I had been aware of Ceres for a long time and the whole dynamic of nurturance and loss and mythos
mm,
and the cosmic mother and layers of that. I was born
mm,
with Ceres in an exact trine to my sun, 11 to 11 degrees. And when Neptune conjunct my Ceres, I was dealing with a custody battle for my children. And it all came out well, but it couldn't have been, I find that when Neptune touches something, we live out that
mm,
mythos. I
mhm,
just looked at my mother and daughter's chart. My mother's Ceres is conjunct my moon, and my daughter's Ceres conjuncts my Neptune. We're talking to the degree. And
yeah,
we have lived out some very intense and powerful mother-daughter
mhm,
dynamics, which all come out well, but we went through it. And we had other people trying to pull us apart in the process, which are all part of that
mhm,
mythology. So tell us how you see Ceres. This has been really
mm.
interesting.
Well, I
Take it away.
see, yeah, I see Ceres as very layered. In fact, you know, it at her essence, she is about what feeds us, what nurtures us, what nourishes
Mhm.
us, and what has nourished us and fed us. It's related to the mother to a degree, but it's also how we were nurtured at the bigger level as well, by society, culture, all those things, and how we nurture and nourish each other and the earth. So she's hugely important to my mind. And I do lay out my thesis in the book for why I think Ceres is really a missing personal planet. She is as important in our planet, in our charts, as Venus, Mars, Moon, Sun, Mercury, paired with Mercury, by the way. So, but she's just inside the, you know, the asteroid belt, which is the belt of all these asteroids. But she's not an asteroid. She is not like any of the other asteroids at all. She is a planet, and the astronomers finally reclassified her. She was named a planet at first, then called an asteroid after Vesta and all the other asteroids were discovered. And then in 2006, the astronomers who, you know, they don't always know what they're doing, right? In classifications.
So we'll
They
talk about
reclassified her finally.
we've got, you posted both her discovery chart and her rediscovery chart.
Mm,
So was she in the asteroid, like, I gather their description of the asteroid belt is there by logarithmic definition. There was supposed
mm,
to be a planet because there's a relationship between the planets and each other's orbits, and there's a logarithmic proportion. Where there should have been
mhm.
a planet between Mars and Jupiter is the asteroid belt, and that the
Yeah.
gravitational field of Jupiter never let this coalesce into a planet. Is
Mm.
it is and Ceres is just inside that? Was she part of that
She
mess,
is in
or
she is in the asteroid belt, but
but she's bigger than all
uh,
of them?
she's 25% of the whole asteroid belt, and she's this
Beautiful.
side of the asteroid belt. I see the
Mhm.
asteroid belt as kind of the protection layer for all the personal planets, right? You
Mhm.
know?
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
It's beautifully done.
So, and she fits in that logarithm exactly. So
Mhm.
that's one of the reasons I think, because the boat, Titus boat, or it was called, I think I've said that right. But anyway, it was dismissed because they didn't count Ceres. So
Mm.
they shoved that logarithm aside. Uh, meaning kind of the hierarchy of
But in
the astronomical
actuality,
world.
she would
Hmm.
have been the core of the planet that formed if that planet had
Yeah,
formed. Yeah.
yeah.
And she's
And
about the
there
same
are
size. She's
beliefs that
Mhm.
there are some theories that she, you know, was kind of a planet that kind of bounced off Jupiter and came in, yeah,
Mm.
all kinds of theories. Yeah.
What,
Hmm.
how big what is her mass in proportion to Pluto? It's
They're
about the
actually
same
very
size,
similar.
isn't it? Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, similar size.
wonderful.
Hmm.
And to
Yeah,
be taken
yeah.
seriously. And they were
And
mythologically.
she connected, and she contains water, and
Mhm.
you know, she's round, which is planetoid, but also she mythologically, yes, they are connected,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
they're connected to Venus as well, because Ceres is Demeter. So there's many kind of themes that connect them, but she's also visible under some conditions, you know, a very dark sky, probably under you know, a new moon. So I, in my mind, the some of the ancients could probably see her occasionally
Mhm.
too. So
'Cause they had
mhm.
darker skies than we'll ever. So here she
Exactly.
is when she was discovered, uh,
Hmm.
and I noticed that she is square Saturn. So
Hmm.
immediately when she came into consciousness, she challenged the patriarchy, and the powers that be.
Exactly. Do you want to know a fun story?
Yes,
I,
please.
I won't. I won't name the astrologer, but a certain male astrologer came into my DMs earlier this week and told me that this was not the correct discovery chart for Ceres, it needs to be rectified. Yes, this was the moment that she was spotted, where it's AA rated on Astro Databank, which is always good enough for
Mhm.
me. And this is when she was spotted. And I feel that's when she came into our consciousness. But this patriarch of astrology told me that this was not the correct chart. So
And why does he think
how
it's
funny
it's
is
not
that?
the right chart?
Oh,
I mean,
he's
it's
tried to
so
give me all his
mansplaining.
reasons.
Um,
Yes, yeah.
Right, and you often with the outer planets, what you see is, it's like when does a business start? Well, there's when you first
Mm,
imagined it, it's when you incorporate it, and when you open the doors. And those are 3 different charts, and they all
mhm.
work for different elements of that business. With something
Yeah.
like Ceres coming in, you have when was it first spotted, when was it first conceived, when was it first announced, all of those,
Mhm,
and they'll have they all those charts work to talk about different parts, like what was the true chart of
mhm,
America. There's many different charts, but they you find that they speak to the specific. I use the Sibley chart that talks about mythic America, when America,
me
our
too.
consciousness of it was formed, even though there might be all kinds of
Mhm,
other charts for secret connections. Why does
mhm.
one
I
have to be
agree.
wrong? It could be speaking about a different aspect of the same thing. But that is very
But it's
funny.
so, to my mind, it's so of her nature. She
Mhm,
was the
mhm,
first planet to be discovered after Uranus broke the bounds of our visible universe in our current culture. So Uranus was discovered, then Ceres. And so, she came in during the Industrial Revolution. And that's interesting in itself because she came into our consciousness as we began to purge the earth even more than we do and to separate families in schools and sending children up chimneys and all those kind of themes as well. She came in during that period, and I think she's kind of been hiding in plain sight since to show us what we are doing to each other in the earth. And now
What
she's
is
in our
her,
consciousness fully.
what is her orbit? How many years around the zodiac?
4.6 years,
Was
approximately. I can't remember the exact days, but
Mhm,
yeah.
mhm. And
Yeah.
this is
Mhm.
when this is her discovery chart, and then you said this is when she was reclassified.
Yeah. Mhm.
Tell
That's
us about
when
that chart.
that's when Pluto was demoted after Eris discovery. That's when the International Astronomical Union decided
Mhm,
to reclassify and create this classification of dwarf planet. And now we have a lot more uh, planets classified as dwarf planets. But really, she was the first because Pluto was not discovered till 1930. So,
mhm, mhm,
this is the discovery chart of this whole new classification of what they've called dwarf planets, which I find quite kind of interesting as well, because
mhm,
the
mhm.
patriarchy has always tried to minimize anything that's feminine in many ways.
Mhm, and it's
But there's so
interesting
many
that
times.
Neptune is sitting very close to her Venus, her birth
Yeah.
Venus, and
And
yes,
Ceres is conjunct Neptune and sitting on the birth Venus. So
yes, that's a very powerful piece of that revelation, and that
mhm,
was, in that huge elliptical orbit of Pluto. Pluto was inside the orbit of Neptune through the 80s and most of the 90s.
mm,
And and it was moving very fast, but the Pluto transits from my clients in the 80s and 90s were real near death experiences. Was
mhm, mhm,
amazingly difficult, powerful time. It was really going through there.
mm,
And then out the other side, as the week that it crossed over that path and headed out towards the far corner of the ellipse, which is where it's heading out
mm,
now, was the week they downgraded it from a planet to a dwarf planet or to a
mhm.
planetoid. And we're all saying, you tell Pluto it's not a planet. But that it went
Yeah.
out there. I'm not doing, but and it is true that as Pluto moves farther away, I'm seeing more existential and conceptual and the power dynamics, and less the person fell off the cliff and
Mm,
and broke their back. So I'm saying less, more conceptual versions of Pluto. So it's interesting that
definitely.
that was when uh, the whole reconception of the asteroid planets were involved. Someone
Mm,
posted talked about loving discovery charts as a jumping off point for studying objects. It is fascinating
mm,
when you look at when anything is born. When a movie is born, when a
mm,
concept is born, when something comes into our understanding. The chart of that moment gives you so much rich information about how
mm.
it's going to play out.
I also find it so interesting that in the discovery chart, she was
Hmm.
exactly conjunct Algol, fixed star Algol to the minute.
Mm,
And
oh, let me go
I
back to
don't
the.
use fixed stars
Hmm.
hugely, but this one
Hmm.
just really struck me because what I'm also witnessing in the world is kind of the rebirth of rewriting the myths from a more ancient perspective.
Hmm. Hmm.
Obviously, I particularly began with the myth of Demeter, Persephone, and Hades, but
Hmm.
in the original myth, there was no rape of Persephone. It was it was completely different. That was written
Really,
by yeah,
the patriarch, the
yep.
the, the
That
post-Hellenic.
was yeah from that period by men, of course. But
Hmm. Well, it
there's an
seems that there
interesting.
was that when the Hellenes came in and brought their god Zeus and all the other big guys, they
Hmm.
united the peninsula by having their gods rape or have sex with all the local goddesses.
Yep,
And
exactly.
that was their attempt to try to get information of what they were beforehand, before,
Hmm.
but what were Vestal virgins. Vesta is really important to my chart. What were the Vestal
Hmm.
virgins before they had to be virginal or they were buried alive? That they were
Yeah.
really still the counselors, the wise souls, the garters of the hearth, and the judges
Hmm.
and counselors. But they only had to become when the society appeared to become more
Hmm.
patriarchal, then if
Hmm.
they had sex with anybody, it was like they now lost their neutrality and were no longer useful.
And of course,
And
Algol is Medusa, and she was punished for having sex with Poseidon. Basically, Poseidon was not punished. Medusa
no,
was punished in the
interesting.
patriarchal myth.
Hmm.
And a lot of people in the mythological realm are trying to reclaim these older stories. You know, the power of the
Good.
feminine.
bring,
Hmm.
bring and the it's not like, again, it's not that one is right or wrong, but as we see the
No.
myth change, we've seen that concept change in the culture. What did we
Hmm.
lose
Hmm.
from the original myth and how can we reinstall that, as
Hmm.
well as be aware of what the
Hmm.
story it tells us as the myth changes? So tell us more about
Yeah.
Algol conjunct Ceres at 23 Taurus,
Mm.
right at the midheaven at the time, and both exactly
Well,
square Saturn
yeah. Well, the fact
and
that
trine
series, yeah,
Vesta.
I'm trying to Vesta. Yeah, the fact that they are right at the top of the chart makes it hugely important. Anyway, right at the top. And associate. I don't like the term rulership anymore, but Ceres is very twin in nature. She's very
Mhm,
connected with the earth. In many ways, she is
mhm,
Gaia, the
mhm,
original earth goddess.
mhm,
And
mhm.
so the fact that she is with God at the top, squaring that Saturn, kind of feels like she came in to challenge the patriarchy or the hierarchy, whatever you want to call it, that we have been living under for centuries, either consciously or unconsciously. There's plenty of evidence that churches consciously diminish the feminine and so on. But I'm sure a lot of the myths that were not written consciously to do it. It's just kind of this telling the story of the time we were in, but we're reclaiming it. So this is
Mhm.
saying we're gonna change these structures. Saturn in Leo, the sign of rulership or the royalty, we're going to kind of end that kind of age. It feels like to me, we're going to take that down. We're going to kind of move into this new paradigm. I also love that she's got a 29-degree Leo. ascendant because at the end of 2011, another fixed star, Regulus, moved from 29 Leo into Virgo from our perspective. And so all this kind of age turning, it's a real turning of the ages story to my
Mhm,
mind.
mhm, mhm.
I can
And that
build and
Jupi
build on it.
that moon in its own sign of, Cancer conjunct
Mhm,
Jupiter, massive moon presence,
mhm,
massive sense of that goddess feminine. I remember when I
mhm,
was going through that, custody battle and, in the mid-80s, and when Ceres was on my Neptune was on my Ceres, and again,
mm,
all turned out fine, but at the time,
mhm,
one of the pieces that was so um, a therapist pointed out to me, that I was, and we didn't know my Ceres was involved, but we were talking about you're living out the Demeter and Persephone myth,
there you
and
go.
you are living out your children are being pulled into the underworld, and you have to go through the process of making sure that they aren't stuck there. That
Mm,
once Demeter acknowledged that Persephone had chosen that, she said, "Okay, I'll
mm,
make sure that you are not stuck. You come out for 6 months of a year, and then you go." And you have the most intense mate there is. So you can go in and do your process. And Persephone's initiation was becoming queen of the underworld. She who escorts
mhm,
people through the process of death and rebirth, through that cauldron,
mhm.
and walks with them through their pain. So
And
she stepped out of
there's
ditzy daughter and into empowered queen in her own story. But what did Ceres do after she finally knew that her daughter was coming
mm,
back? She then went on to start the Mysteries of Ephesus and began the longest
mm,
running mystery schools. That
mhm,
sometimes there's that place beyond the struggle, beyond the role of mother, that mothers have a hard time
mm,
believing.
mhm.
Now can be the body of our real work that is formed by this. It's not forget this, but it's part of our initiation into the next level of our work, which I see a part of Ceres.
Mm. And a lot of this journey for me came from running my Venus retrograde class because I
Mhm,
came to in a dream. Venus is my most elevated planet, right at the top of my chart, with Neptune
mhm,
in
mhm,
Scorpio,
mhm,
and this class came to me in a dream in early 2017 and has grown and developed, and involving exploring the heroine's journey, which is
mhm,
the Venus retrograde story, which is that
mhm,
reunification story of Ceres, Venus, and Persephone.
mhm,
And
mhm,
Ceres, in some tellings of the myth, or Demeter rather, roamed the earth for about 9 days, looking for Persephone. And that's usually about the time Venus is invisible from that area of the world during her retrograde. It's just also interesting to me
It
how it all
is.
just kind of, yeah.
Now, you had you asked me to put this
Mm,
chart up, the Venus, Ceres,
mm,
Pluto. Tell me about this
mhm,
chart. As we're bringing up Venus, Ceres, and Pluto in this story you were just telling, I thought it might be
mm.
relevant.
Yeah. Well, there's another chart we'll quickly look at in a minute, but I noticed that uh, Zero Aquarius has been a really hot degree recently. And so we had a Jupiter Saturn conjunction, talk about patriarchal conjunction, moving us into the
Mhm,
great mutation, into the age of air. At Zero Aquarius, we had a Venus Mars conjunction. And then on December the 7th last year, we had Venus, Ceres, and Pluto all meeting at Zero Aquarius. And I was like, I wonder if they ever met before, the three of them. And I found this chart then by going back and searching quite a lot. And this was 1823, so just 22 years after she was discovered, and so they met at the world point, which is another hot degree right now. We've got we've got Saturn and Neptune meeting there early next year, and Zero Aries is the kind of world point. It's the point of creation. It's the new beginning, And I really kind of feel that that three came together, it was a real start of us moving into the age of Aquarius, whatever you want to call it, the turning of the ages. Because I think we don't move in on a day. I think it's a process. And so it was a new beginning of learning that we are interconnected, Venus, Ceres, Pluto, that we are mind, body, spirit. We're connected with each other, the earth, with the soul, with spirit, with the outer planets, Pluto. Oh, yeah, so much, And quantum science gone there now, right? So, you know, so. And there's other things, the nodes on this are actually a reverse nodal return for the USA's chart, exactly at 6 degrees. And so all of this has very much been connected with the USA's inception and growth. So I could just say so much about all these planets, all these charts. But for me, it's the 10th house. Look at it. It's in the 10th house, this in the USA's chart, and it's right there at the top. I think it started the breakdown of how the United States was formed to where we are now with this zero Aquarius that's coming.
So
I'm sure
here
you have
is
things you
the Venus Ceres Pluto conjunction of 2024. Tell us what you're seeing here. And again, is that Algol again conjunct Uranus?
Yes, yeah. And that Algol conjunct Uranus has been very interesting in itself, but it's also happening right at the cusp of the 5th house. I'm quite happy with my house system I use, which is in many ways it's the house of kingship, royalty, but it's also the house of creative self-expression. I think this chart is helping us to create something very new. We've got Mercury 12 Sagittarius up there, which is on the ascendant of the USA. There's just so much to do with the USA. It's unbelievable. But also Mars is on the north node of the USA's chart. But it's
seeing that Ceres Pluto Venus conjunction, would that be, saying we are at a point, and it's interesting, it is that was after the election, before the inauguration, when we're seeing we have a descent to do. And
definitely.
with that, we have a descent to do as a community, as an Aquarius, as an Aquarian community. And out of that can come rebirth. But first we have to acknowledge this descent.
Definitely. And there's so much, happening down here as well. The North Node at that point was at 3 Aries, where we've got an awful lot of action happening right now. And we had a new Venus star point on March the 22nd at 2 Aries down there. But
and for people, that's a Sun-Venus conjunction that begins the new Venus star point.
Yeah, but I always see Scorpio, Scorpio Taurus on this parenting axis, the MCIC, as really kind of birthing a new empowered paradigm as we move forward. Because I share that axis, and mine is 60 Scorpio Taurus, and it always feels like I'm just rebirthing something very new in a very shamanic way, and I see that as moving into this connection with the earth and spirit and source in many ways.
So I'm just taking a quick peek at the Sibley chart for America with its progressions, and Ceres is sitting right now, or will, on the solar eclipse coming up. Ceres is going to conjunct at 11 Aries, the progressed moon of America, down in the 4th chart. Again, I think, it's interesting that we are seeing what with Ceres and Aries going through the bottom of our chart as a country, and the Aries moon, so many kidnappings, and that
Mm-hmm.
Ceres seems to be like, I'm pulling you away. We have kidnapping uh, left and right in the name of being immigrants, which are not, and even those
Mm-hmm.
that are immigrants who have every right to be treated with uh, due process here in America, as the Constitution declares. So,
Mm-hmm.
dealing with that pulling down into the underworld and how can we heal that is it
Mm-hmm.
looks like it's a very powerful part of where Ceres is playing out in our chart. And this
Mm.
winter, this time, and this eclipse coming up. This eclipse
And
will
you,
be, yeah,
sorry. And
go ahead.
the moon on terms, of course, is the people. And so, the interesting that I hadn't actually seen this chart, so thank you. But, interesting that the secondary progress moon is in Aries in that fourth house, because I think people are gradually working out, becoming awakened to realizing that we each have to play our part in
Hmm.
creating this new paradigm we want to live in and standing up to what we don't like out there instead of expecting
Absolutely.
somebody to save us. Hmm.
Right.
Yeah,
And that,
yeah.
the eclipse, we had a new moon's a new moon in by progression in Pisces just
Hmm.
um, 21 months ago. And that is a chance to rebirth something in our country in a much more tender place. But I saw it at the
Mm.
bottom of the chart as we were stepping out of the world stage. We have been for a while.
Yeah.
We have been since the progressed sun went into Pisces. And
Hmm.
will that that it may be for the world's benefit that we are stepping off
Hmm.
and becoming secondary to the research on energy and medicine and new technology
Yeah.
is happening elsewhere, not here. So
Hmm.
much of
Hmm.
the world policing that we used to do, they're taking back for better or for worse. So it's going to
Hmm.
be interesting to see what that means that we have stepped off the world stage and moved into
Mm.
this Aries section. We'll see if we can
Mm. We will
rebirth it. The
see.
Aries moon, that moon will be moving forward into uh, heading upwards towards, stepping out into the light again, but not for a bit. So when your
Yeah.
people are looking at their chart, where would they start? Where would you like them to start when they look at look for their Ceres and begin to
Mm-hmm.
pay attention to it in their life?
I actually think the sign it's in is more important, and the any aspects it makes
Mhm,
more than house placement, because we all
mhm,
know that, you know houses are kind of they don't exist in space, and I think and astrologers love to argue over house placement all the time anyway. So if your series is whichever sign it's in, look to that first, then look to aspects. So it's angular as well. So I tell my own story in the book. My own chart has Ceres angular on the ascendant, and it's square the nodes. It's obviously a really important story in my chart, and so those aspects would be where I start, and it's in Capricorn. So I'm kind of here to take on the structures and the patriarchy of various things as well. So.
That's a beautiful piece. And so when you have them look
Mhm.
at it, what what
Mm.
strength can they find in their Ceres?
Mm. No, so I associate series mostly with signs, particularly Taurus and Virgo. There's again, astrologers love to argue. Some astrologers think she rules Virgo, some think she rules Taurus. I think she has association with both in many ways, but I could associate her with all earth signs. So if you have Ceres in an earth sign, she's really strong. If she's angular, she's really strong. She's square your node, she's really strong like mine. Um, yeah, but I just think she's a powerful planet. I think really look at her as a personal planet, a big part of yourself that shows you how you what feeds you really, and how you were
That's a good
nurtured.
expression. What feeds you in all the mythic
Mhm,
forms of it? How do
mhm,
you nurture
yeah,
yourself? And how do you
yeah,
take responsibility for parenting yourself the way you wish you had
mhm,
been parented, not the way you were?
yeah. Because I don't think any of us, even if you had great parents, great upbringing, I don't think anybody can meet all your needs in the way that you can meet your own.
So that's a beautiful piece with her.
Mm,
And
mhm,
so you would suggest that they start by looking at the sign, the house placements, and to see that what do you see that they need to watch out for uh, with
mm,
Ceres? I what is the problem that they can also denote because every planet has that spectrum,
mm.
and we see that you
Oh,
said
yeah.
is how to feed yourself, how to be fed, how to be
Mm,
nurtured at a deep level. What do you see her
mhm.
challenging?
Well, for example, series Square the Nodes, my own story again, it was what's called a skip step in evolutionary astrology on the bendings, according to other astrology. It's often something you've not been able to step into or realize until later in life. So that could be a challenge. And that follows my own story really well. And so I could almost highlight it to the day from when I realized that, I couldn't expect anybody else to meet my needs. And I think it's also a lesson in kind of I'm not going to sit with that past trauma anymore or let it hold me. I'm just going to move forward with how I work with this and meet my own needs. So I think that's the lesson because often it shows, where your needs were not met. I have a friend whose series is opposing his Neptune. I can't remember the signs, but it's really his parental story. His dad was quite absent, so Saturn's involved in there somewhere. But his mother treated him his like her best friend, almost like her
Mm,
replacement husband. You know, and
mhm,
he read my book and cried and went to therapy. He's resolved a lot of those issues within himself. It can
mm,
bring up some deep childhood trauma issues. You kind of
mhm,
really explore your series in your chart, but it all depends where it is, placement, planet,
mm. And
but
I think that piece of how does he take back
mhm.
self-care from his mother,
Yeah,
who
yeah,
basically says, "You get cared for if you take care of my needs." It's
basically, yeah.
and how do you take that back? And I think of an
Mm,
exhibit that I saw once on the mysteries of Ephesus, and one of the pieces for one of the mysteries of that death and rebirth cycle, that you bury something and it is reborn. The
mhm,
priest would make these little Osirises out
mhm,
of ground is exotic things, good, wonderful oils and seeds, and you take home a little
mhm,
dark sarcophagus and you bury it and you water it, and out of it comes new life.
mm,
And
mm.
that symbol of out of your trauma can come new life. If you
Yeah.
nurture yourself, heal yourself, and water it, I think is a powerful
Mhm.
part of the Ceres myth, which is
I think
beautiful.
so, and I think the whole of our consciousness is moving that way to.
Mhm,
I follow internal family systems. I follow, I read. I kind of read and study a lot, but even therapeutic therapy. Pluto
mhm,
was the kind of discovery of talk therapy of Jung and archetypes and things like that. Then it moved to kind of family systems therapy. Now it's internal family systems therapy, that it's all contained within you. And Pluto is Ceres is a huge part of that, of kind of coming into yourself and really kind of coming into balance and making sure all your own needs met, either by self-care, by therapy, by looking at your childhood trauma and letting it not hold you anymore, because it
mhm,
will happen.
mhm.
You can't change it, but you can change how it holds you. Yeah. And we
And
can
what
do
you
that
do is that
collectively too.
Mhm.
Sorry.
How
Yeah.
can people find you if they want to explore
Mm,
Ceres in their chart or find your book?
mm. Well, my book's everywhere. It's on Amazon, or I have a publishing site, Sacred Threads Imprint, where I'm selling signed copies if you want. But also, my website is just my name, louiseedington.com. I am not taking any more
Wendy.
individual one-on-one readings till next year because I'm just busy, overwhelmed. But just follow me on the videos. I'm
Mhm.
doing a lot more interviews about
And your other
series. I'm
books.
actually going to have, yeah, Juno. Oh, I've got 3 other books.
Mhm.
Modern Astrology. Modern Astrology is my first. The Complete Guide to Astrology is my best-selling book. It's actually That's an interesting story. It kind of led me to a lot of this as well because I was paid to write it, but I was
Mhm.
paid to write it by actually a lesbian editor who said, all these astrology books are written from this binary perspective. Can you write a book from a non-binary perspective? So I did.
Yeah,
so, uh,
absolutely. I'm
yeah.
all with you on that, changing the language. Mhm.
Yeah. And so I love that book still, but I to kind of actually rewrite it and expand on some of it, and I probably will. But and I also wrote a book on tarot and astrology, so which I love.
Wonderful.
So,
Thank you.
mhm,
And thank you so much for
mhm.
joining us this week.
Thank you.
Next month, I'm going to be interviewing Silver Wainhouse again, the last Wednesday of the month. And Silver Wainhouse, who is founder of Black Joy Lab, lives in Paris, is an astrologer I knew in Santa Fe with an amazing story. So we'll be talking to her next month. In the meantime, thank you again, Louise. It's been a real pleasure.
Mm, thank you very much, Heather.
Take care.